I'm an older guy, and the way things are in my life, I am pretty much bulletproof. I don't have a boss. I don't have to answer to anybody. I do whatever the fuck I want. But a lot of people whom I respect, they have real jobs in the real world. They have real responsibilities. If it came out that they're doing the work that they're doing on YouTube, their lives would be destroyed. And that's what Kraut and his skeptic goon squad were trying to do.
Nothing, no real names. It's just videos, tweets, There's some of these are empty.
Well, except for Coach Redfield, but he already put his information out there anyway, so we did a background check on him.
That was funny.
Well,
can I please say?
That clip came from a Warski Brothers live stream that happened last night, as a matter of fact. And today there's been a whole shitstorm. I mean, it's like a shit bomb exploded, and it's just splattering everybody in the skeptic community. Okay, so let me just tell you a little bit about what's going on. A little over a week ago, I claimed that Kraut and T was planning to dox me and to smear me with old accusations about different business deals and that I was a secret agent of the alt-right and shit like that. A lot of people to that said that I was being all paranoid, that Kraut had no intention of doing that, it was all in my head, that, you know, I was practically hearing voices and seeing little green men, you know. Lo and behold, it turned out that Kraut was running a Discord server that had a whole bunch of people working on it, a lot of skeptic people working on it. And a lot of skeptics had access to this private server. And the intent of this private server was very simple. It was to gather personal information about people who were in the alt-right and people who were too friendly to the alt-right, or just flat out enemies, such as myself. Gather this information, this personal information, and use it against them. In other words, it was a doxing and smearing Discord server. That's what its purpose was, to dox people and to smear people. And over today, you know, all the evidence is surfacing of this. Somebody apparently got into this server and recorded a lot of material, a lot of conversations, took a lot of screenshots, and all of this got dumped in 4chan. And, you know, the weaponized autism of 4chan is diligently at work, but what's come out is, I mean, there's no other way to look at it. A large swath of the skeptic community was supporting Kraut in an effort to dox and smear people. People that they didn't like, people that they considered unfriendly, people that they considered alt-right. And what they were doing was just, you know, SJW tactics, but taken to an extreme. This was a systematic effort to ruin people, to ruin a lot of people, for no other reason than because Kraut and his skeptic goons didn't like what they had to say. And, you know, all the stuff I said last week, all the stuff that people said that I was paranoid and crazy, I said last week, Jeff Holiday had gathered information about me, passed it on to a low-level 4chaner, who had then proceeded to put it on a doxing site, and Kraut was planning on using that publicly available information to dox me and smear me in order to discredit me and sort of like drive me off YouTube altogether. It turned out that I was absolutely right, and the guy, the low-level 4chaner, a guy called The Guardian, he was there in that server. They were all buddies. They were all friends. They were all on this plan to do it. As you heard in the clip, they gathered background information about me. Background information. What kind of background information do you need about a YouTuber? What, am I, you know, going for a credit check? Am I applying for a job? Is that why they had to check my background? Bullshit. Checking the background is just a euphemism for gathering information to dox and smear somebody. And they were doing it not just to me. I mean, I was arrogant enough to think that it was just me. It turned out that they were going to smear a whole bunch of people. Now this matters. This matters why? Because there are crazy Antifa people who target fascists of the alt-right. That's why Millennial Woes, after he was doxxed by that rag up in Scotland where he lived, he had to flee the country. He's off in Europe somewhere, essentially hiding out. And I'm not knocking the man, okay? I'm not saying that his behavior is, is ridiculous. Not the way Antifa operate. Antifa go and smash people's houses and they hurt people. And we've seen it. I mean, this isn't like something that, I'm just making up or that our Millennial Woes is all paranoid. No, no, no. We know how Antifa operates. Kraut and T and his skeptic goon squad were aiding and abetting Antifa. Aiding and abetting Antifa in an effort to silence people that they didn't like. There is no other way to look at this. I'm sorry if I get a little hot on the collar here. I'm actually trying very hard to keep my cool because you see, I'm an older guy, and the way things are in my life, I am pretty much bulletproof. I don't have a boss. I don't have to answer to anybody. I do whatever the fuck I want. But a lot of people whom I respect, they have real jobs in the real world. They have real responsibilities. If it came out that they're doing the work that they're doing on YouTube, their lives would be destroyed. And that's what Kraut and his skeptic goon squad were trying to do. And now a lot of these people, the skeptic goon squad, they're trying to say, oh, I didn't know anything about the server. I had no idea what they were doing. Bullshit. Bullshit. I have tweets from that girl with an opinion. She was part of that server. She knew what was going on. She admitted it. She admitted the fact that she knew that my doxing information was floating around, but she says that she tried to get them not to show that information, What Kraut was doing was exactly what he did to Rage After Storm. He tried to dox her, tried to have her lose her job. Why? Because he couldn't argue against her. He called her a Nazi bitch queen and tried to get her fired from her employment. Now, a few months later, he's organizing a whole Discord server to target a whole bunch of people, and it's coming out now. I mean, what kind of people are they? Now, on your list is the screenshot of the people on that Discord server. They're all going to claim that they knew nothing about the real work that was going on there. That's bullshit. Bullshit. Because Kraut himself has said that there were server-wide messages sent out. Everybody knew what was going on. Every single one of those names on that list knew what was going on. It wasn't a big surprise, no. They knew what was going on. All of them, without exception. And it gets worse. It turned out that these people, Kraut and his skeptic goon squad, they were in touch with a journalist from the New York Times, a woman named Amy. Now, this woman, this journalist for the New York Times, she was talking to them. Why do you think? What do you think would be the purpose of them talking to her? Why do you think that they giddily identified themselves to her and explained what they were doing? Because they wanted to pass along personal, private information to the New York Times about the target of their doxing and smearing campaign. Exactly the same way that Millennial Woes was doxed and smeared and driven out of Scotland. Exactly the same way, only on a bigger stage. They were going to use the New York Times, and it wasn't going to be just one alt-righter. It was going to be a whole bunch of them, and not even people of the alt-right, people that were sympathetic to some of the problems that the alt-right was pointing out. Sometimes people that Kraut and T and his skeptic goon squad simply didn't like. They were going to dox them and have the New York Times smear them across the entire mainstream media landscape. What the hell kind of people would do such a thing? The first time I made a video about Kraut and T, I told you what he was. He was a coward. He would never face anybody man to man. He would always do things in the coward's way. The knife in the back, the betrayal, the doxing, the smearing. You know, he's calling he and his goons, the skeptic goon squad, are saying, you know, that the people they don't like are pedophiles now. Just smearing people with whatever they can find. And they were going to use the New York Times to destroy the lives of everybody on their hit list. There is no other way to look at it. Why on earth would they be interested in talking to the New York Times? Why? Because this reporter was going to be, you know, what, give them some great insight into genetics or some shit like that? No, 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 no. They plan to use her. To use her and ruin the lives of all of these people that they didn't like. And they couldn't argue against them, so they did the coward's way. Now we have to ask ourselves why Kraut and T and the skeptic goon squad got to this position. Well, it's very simple. You see, these people, when they started their channels, you know, nobody paid attention to them. They were just little YouTubers, right? And then they hit on this whole thing of like going after religious belief. You know, discrediting religious belief, discrediting some of the admittedly nonsensical positions that a lot of religious people hold. For instance, you know, anti-vaxxers. It's crazy. The vaccines don't cause autism. Some religious people, some fringe people believe that. So the skeptics came in and started hammering away at that. And it garnered them views and subscribers. Lots of views, lots of subscribers. And what did the views represent? Money. A lot of money. Because of the ad revenue, right? So from going after religious believers, they transitioned to going after feminists because they started hitting on feminists, and boy, did those sub counts rise. They went after feminists and SJWs, and they saw their sub count go up and up and up. They saw their view counts go up, 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 up. They saw their advertising revenue go up and up and up. And they were happy. All they had to do was just, you know, kick the nearest feminist, kick the nearest SJWs, and they got their money. And they were happy. But then Adpocalypse happened. Adpocalypse happened and their revenue stream decreased drastically. But something much more important than that even. It was obvious that the money from Adpocalypse had gone down, yes, but something more subtle, something that I've noticed for several months now. And the reason I did that quickie analysis of viewerships, view counts, and all the rest of it. You see, what happened was that their channels were all plateauing. They weren't growing. They kept on kicking at feminists, kicking at SJWs, but they kept on kicking and kicking and kicking all through 2017, and their numbers really didn't rise. Not like before. And their page views, in point of fact, started slowly to decrease. Because people were getting bored of this, okay? And so as their page views decreased, their ad revenue decreased. And on top of that, the Adpocalypse, and all of a sudden, you know, before they were earning 100 and now they were earning, you know, 20, maybe even 10. And they started panicking. They started looking around for the next hit. The next hit of heroin, the next hit of subscribers, the next hit of view counts. And they settled on the alt-right. They said, yeah, you know, the alt-right, the Nazis, you know, Richard Spencer, all those people, we can kick them. We can kick them, and, you know, it's going to be popular because the mainstream media says that, you know, the alt-right are bad. So we'll kick them, and our views will go up. Our view counts will go up. Our subscriber base will increase. We'll start to make more money again, like the good old days. That experiment didn't go far. They started hitting the alt-right. Kraut was the first. Kraut started hitting the alt-right and it just blew up in his face. Because it wasn't like kicking, you know, some feminist or some SJW who was logically inconsistent and was just spouting just a bunch of bullshit. The alt-righters, they're prepared. The hard-righters, of which I consider myself a member of, we're prepared. We know more or less what we're talking about. You know, I mean, some of us are kind of stupid, but we're not that fucking stupid. And the alt-righters, the really autistic savant kind of alt-righters, they are prepared. You might not like them, but they are prepared and they've got their arguments ready. They're not a pushover. They're not feminists. They're not SJWs. They hit back. And that's what happened. That's why it all blew up in Kraut T's face. He started going after the alt-right. And what happened? They argued against him and defeated him and made him look like a fool. And his subscriber base started to decrease. And that was a lesson. That was a big fucking lesson. And they started panicking. They started thinking to themselves in their insanity and Kraut's insanity. They started thinking to themselves that they had to hit the alt-right harder. And the harder they hit the alt-right, the worse it was for them. Because the problem with the alt-right and the hard right, the problem is that they are right about the problems afflicting our society today. And they are right about the science. And they are right about the facts. That's the problem, see? Because if they were wrong, it'd be easy to defeat them, like defeating the feminists. But that wasn't the case, see? The alt-righters, unfortunately for a lot of people, have science and the facts on their side. That's why as hard as Kraut tried to hit them and hurt them, he kept failing. And so they resorted to this bullshit. Doxing and smearing people. I was the first because, you know, I have this knack for antagonizing people. I've had it since I was a child. It's a natural gift. Maybe I'll teach it to you someday. I was the first on their hit list because I antagonized the ever-living shit out of Kraut T and Jeff Holiday. And those two little dweebs talked themselves into a frenzy over me and decided to go after me and dox me. Idiot Kraut showed his hand, see, showed his cards. Like I explained last week in that video. You know, he made a little reference to somebody in my past, and I knew what he'd done. And it was an inference, a deduction and an inference that led me to conclude that he was preparing to dox me and smear me. So I got out ahead of it. That's why I did the video last week. It never occurred to me that they had a whole team of people working on this, working on doxing and smearing people for no other reason than they could not defeat them, for no other reason than money. It's all about money. It's always about money. Never forget that. Never forget that. It is always about money. The decision to go after the alt-right was they were looking for a hit of subscribers, a hit of page views, a hit of ad revenue. They thought that by going after the alt-right that they would get that. And they got so locked into this mentality that they went right off a cliff and did this craziness. Now the issue becomes what to do with Kraut. I've thought long and hard about it because over this past week, I will be honest with you, I've thought a lot about the whole issue of doxing because I've always taken this YouTube thing as a lark, as a hobby, as a game. You know, nothing serious, right? It's online. It doesn't affect the real world. But I've slowly come to change my mind because I realized that for me, who would not be affected by being doxed or smeared, I'd be embarrassed, but you know, I can get over that. I'd be embarrassed, but a lot of other people, their lives would be ruined. I look at millennial woes who had to leave the country of his birth because of the doxing he suffered, because of the threats from Antifa, credible threats. Threats of people who meant to do him harm, do his family harm. What Kraut and T and the Skeptic Goon Squad were up to is unconscionable, unforgivable. I, for one, would like to see Kraut gone forever. Gone off YouTube, gone off Discord, gone off Twitter, gone from the internet. His channel just poof, gone. There is no place in YouTube for a man like Kraut and T. There is no place in YouTube, on Twitter or Discord or anywhere online for an individual who would willingly, knowingly try to cause such personal harm and suffering. Such behavior is inexcusable. It is simply beyond the pale.